Hello everyone. Last lecture we discussed about density based method in clustering, and today our next topic is grid based method. So grid based clustering. So what is grid based clustering method? It uses a multi resolution grid data structure. It uses a multi resolution grid data structures. It has several interesting methods. The first method is a sting. The sting means a statistical information grid approach, and second one is a click, CLIQUE. Okay, so next one is a wave cluster. So there are three type of clusters. So that's the most important cluster in grid based method. First one is a string, second one is a click, and wave clusters. Before we discuss, first we should know what is sting. A statistical information grid approach. So this thing was proposed by Wang Yang in 1997. In this method, the spatial area is divided into rectangular cells. In this method, the sting method is divided into rectangular cells. So there are several levels of cells are corresponding to different levels of resolutions. So the first, for each cell, the high level is partitioned into several smaller cell in next lower level. For each cell, the high level is partitioned into several smaller cells into the next lower level. That means the statistical information of each cell is calculated and stored beforehand, and it is used to answer queries. So the statistical information of each cell is calculated and it will be stored beforehand, and it is used to answer queries. So that the parameters of high level cells, so that the parameters of high level cells can be easily calculated from parameters of lower level cells. So the what is the parameter? Count, mean, yes, minimum, maximum. So type of distribution means a normal distribution, uniform distributions. Then it is using a top down approach. We need to answer spatial data queries. Then we using top down approach to answer spatial data queries. Then start from a pre-selected layer, that is typically with a small number of cells. For each cell in the current level, compute the confidence interval. For each cell in the current level, compute the confidence interval. Then remove the irrelevant cells for the remove the irrelevant cells from the further considerations, so that when finishing examine the current layer, it produced to sorry it proceed to next lower level. When finished examining the current layer, then proceed to next lower level. So that like repeatedly repeat this process until the bottom layer is reached. So process of these are the process of sting approach. So the main advantage of this sting approach is it is a query independent. It is easy to parallelized or incremental update. So omega of k, that means omega of k, where k is the number of grid cells at the lowest level, and the advantage is query independent, and disadvantage is all the cluster boundaries are either horizontal, all the cluster boundaries are either horizontal or vertical, and no diagonal boundaries is detected. This one is a disadvantage of sting. And the next approach is a wave cluster, a wavelet transform. It is the wavelet cluster is proposed by Sheklos Sheklos Chatterjee in 1998. Okay, it is a multi-resolution. Wave cluster is a multi-resolution clustering approach which apply wavelet transform to the future space. A wavelet transform is a signal processing technique that decomposes a signal into different frequency subband. It can be both grid and density based method. It can be this Wave cluster is a both grid based and density based method. The input parameters, the wavelet and the no applications. What are the input parameter is number of grid cells for each dimension, and next one is a wavelet and the number of applications of wavelet transform. These are the our input parameters. So how to apply the wavelet transform to find a cluster? It summarizes the data by imposing a multi-dimensional grid structure on data space. How to apply the wavelet transform means to summarize the data by imposing a multi-dimensional grid structure on data space. These multi-dimensional spatial data objects are represented in n-dimensional future space. N-dimensional future space. Now apply wavelet transform on future space to find the dense region in the future space. To find the dense regions in the future space. Then apply wavelet transform multiple times, which results in cluster at different scale from fine to coarse. From fine to coarse. So these are the steps to find the wavelet transform to find clusters. And next one is why it is wavelet transformation useful for clustering. It uses hat shaped filter. It uses hat shape filters to emphasize region where point clusters, but simultaneously to suppress weaker information in their boundary. It is a multi-resolution method, and also it is a cost efficiency. It is an effectively remove method for outlier. The major feature is the time complexity of this method is omega of n. Okay, it detect arbitrary shaped cluster at different scale. It only applicable to low dimensional data. These are the major features, and most important one is it is not sensitive to noise, not sensitive to input order. These are the wavelet transform approach. And next one, the third approach, the clustering in Quist. It was proposed by Agarwal and Raghavan in 98. It is based on automatically identifying the subspaces of high dimensional data space. It allow better clustering than original space. Okay, so the it can be considered as both density based and grid based method. It partition each dimension into the same number of equal length intervals. So next one is here the partition m dimensional data space into non-overlapping rectangular units. So that what is rectangular units? The unit is dense if the fraction of total data point contained in the unit exceed the input model parameter. Okay, so the next one is a cluster is a maximal set of connected dense units. Cluster is a maximum set of connected dense unit within a subspace, so that the clique can be considered both density based and grid based method. And next one is a partition the data space and find the number of points that lies inside each cell of the partition. So this identify the subspace that contain clustering using the appropriate principle. Okay, so to identify the subspace using appropriate principle. How to identify clusters to determine dense units in all subspace of interest, and to determine connected dense units in all subspaces of interest. All subspaces of interest. First one is here determine dense unit in all subspaces of interest. Second one is connected dense units in all subspaces of interest. And next one, generate minimal description for the clusters. So to determine maximal region that cover a cluster of connected dense unit for each cluster, to determine minimal cover of each clusters. These are the generate minimal descriptions of the clusters. So the main advantage of this clique approach is automatically find subspaces of the highest dimensional, so that high density cluster exists in those subspaces. So the next one is here, it is incentive to the order of record. It is incentive to the order of records in input and does not pre-resume some canonical data distributions, and it scales linearly with the size of input and has good scalability as the number of dimensions in data increase. Here we have the three dimensions, that is vacation, salary, the person's salary person, vacations, and age comparisons. So next, the accuracy of clustering result may be degraded. These are the disadvantage of click approach and expense of the simplicity of the method. So the accuracy of clustering result may be degraded at the expense of the simplicity. Okay, these are the disadvantage. Okay, so the three type of approaches of grid based method. Okay, we will discuss our next topic, evaluation method, in our next lecture. Thank you.